Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about building the perfect lighting kit. For those of you who are new here, I'm Daniel Norton, photographer in New York City. This channel is all about kind of my philosophy of photography. We'll do some demos and stuff, but we do a lot of these chats here on the porch where I kind of give you some insight into my career and kind of how I built up, and hopefully this can help you. So I get dozens of DMs a day, believe it or not, with people asking me very specific questions about should I buy this, should I buy that, should I buy this when it comes down to lighting. And so I thought I'd make this video. Not going to answer that question directly, but I'm going to talk a little bit about why you might buy something. And I'll list kind of in the bottom the link to my kits. If you guys haven't been to that channel, I guess site, whatever they call it, I list like a bunch of different kits that I use. But the actual equipment isn't going to matter as much in this. Is more the philosophy of it. So let's kind of jump into it, and you'll see what I mean. Okay, so if I'm building the ultimate lighting kit, no matter what budget I'm on, this is assuming you're a photographer. It's assuming that you shoot, small to medium scale projects. So like portraits, small groups, advertisements of small things, product photography. If you do huge, large scale stuff, if you shoot sports arenas, if you do like massive advertising campaigns, then you probably don't need to be watching this video. So if you are and you don't know what lighting to buy, then contact me directly, I guess. So people often ask me, how many lights? That's one of the very first questions. So I usually answer that you can do most things with 3 lights. So if I was building the ultimate lighting kit, I probably would start with 3 lights. That doesn't mean that you're always going to use 3 lights. It doesn't mean that sometimes it wouldn't be nice to have 4 or 5 or 8 or whatever. But with 3 lights, you can do most things. So those lights could be, pro photo strobes like I use. They could be speed lights. They could be some other kind of strobe. They could be hot lights. With 3 lights, you can basically light up a space. You can light up your subject in an interesting manner, right? I've done other videos either here and then also on Adorama. I'll put some links in the description about 3-point lighting, kind of talking about it. So you'll get that. But with your 3 lights, you'll be able to light your subject, give some kind of separation light, and light your space. That's pretty much it. You might also use it for fine details if you're shooting a product or whatever. So you want to have 3 light sources ideally. Does that mean that if you can only afford to buy 1 light source right now that you shouldn't be shooting? Absolutely not. Start with 1, build up. This is the ultimate, so you won't have it all the first time you go out shooting, right? You can add as you go. Beyond the 3 lights, you're going to want to have probably double that number of stands, right? You're going to want stands to put your lights on, I should say. So you're going to want 3 light stands. I like to use C-stands. You could use whatever. It depends on where you're going and what location you're on. You're going to want lights, your lights up on stands almost always. Now, I say almost always because maybe you'll put it on top of your camera, The other 3 stands are to hold things that are going to modify your lights, right? Basically, when you're creating a light, there's like that first step of it. First, we put our lights up, and then we shape them down, right? Based on what we want to achieve. One way of doing that is to put modifiers on the lights themselves, but another way to do it is to modify them with outside sources, things like flags or scrims, diffusion material, that kind of stuff, bounce boards. So you're going to want something to hold those, right? Ultimately, 3 more stands, that way you have enough stuff to basically do it. You might even use one of the stands to hold the background up. This is going to give you your baseline, right? So on that note, I'm not going to talk about modifiers yet. I will at the end. I'll talk about kind of modifiers and why I pick them. You're going to, on light modifiers. So what you're going to want to do is think about how you're going to shape the light outside the nature of a modifier, right? Like I just said. So you're going to want something that reflects back light, typically something that is white. Truck's going by. The white bounce board is going to be, more diffusive, meaning that it'll bounce back light, but it'll be diffused. It'll spread the light everywhere. It'll make it a little bit more kind of even, and oftentimes with the whiteboard, the whole bounce board will throw back in the same direction fully, so that you will get a more kind of, you'll be able to fill the board, if you will, meaning that you'll, in theory, get a softer light too, because remember that softness and hardness is based on the size of your light source. So you want something white to mount with, you want something silver to mount with, something reflective. You could tinfoil on a board, like Seth's built many times. You could do all kinds of different things, silver bounce reflectors that you can buy. Basically, you're going to want silver. You could use a mirror here too, but a mirror is like a more advanced thing. I would say silver is probably where you want to go. Silver is going to give you more of a, it's going to give you more light bounce, right? It's going to throw more light, but it's also going to be typically a harder bounce because the silver board is going to reflect your light source. If my light's bouncing off the silver board, I might not get the full light to bounce back at the exact angle. So I'm going to get a bit of a harder light source. And depending on how the silver is, it might be more uneven. Like I like a nice silver board that's kind of beat up because it kind of makes it a little bit more dappled. That can really be really interesting. So you're going to want that, right? You're going to want to kick light back in a hard way, and you're going to want to kick light back in a soft way. The third thing you're going to want is something to block light or to use for negative fill, so something black, right? Again, you could just take a black piece of foam core board. All three of these things could be foam core, which is fine, and that works great, and I use them a lot to cut things. If you have the budget, you could invest in something like a flag, a proper flag. Again, I'll put links. Flags are made out of duvetine. Duvetine absorbs light, so it's going to be a little bit more perfect in the blocking and the absorption. And also, flags generally have the proper, little piece on them to attach it to a stand very nicely and easily, and they're going to last, right? So proper flags are good. They come in all different sizes and shapes. So you can use, those three things now to modify your lights as you bring them in, right? You have something to bounce soft/diffuse, something to bounce hard/specular, something to block light, right? So you've got three lights, you got three ways of modifying the lights outside that. Very specifically, if you're using flash, I would almost always get some kind of a radio system where you can fire it. They're so cheap now. Whatever system you're in, get some kind of radio. You don't want to be tethered in with the cable if you can avoid it. But if you're not using flash, don't worry about that. To me, and I know that this is probably one of the last things a lot of people will buy, I think that in the ultimate lighting kit, you're going to want a light meter. You want a light meter because the light meter is going to allow you to do a lot of stuff without taking the pictures. And I get that it's simple enough with a digital camera to just take a picture, but setting stuff up before... Wow. They're doing construction up the road, so we get these big diesel trucks driving by. Setting stuff up before the subject gets there, setting stuff up before even the camera's set up, is a really great way to work, and it's a good habit to form. So having a light meter is super great. You can put it at the bottom of your list, though, if you're buying other stuff. It's probably not the most important thing, especially if you're shooting digital, but certainly something to get to learn. And then, and there's a lot of other accessories like sandbags and stuff I'm not going to mention here because I'm really just talking specifically about lighting. Now you're going to want to buy some kind of modifiers for the actual lights. So you could just get away with bouncing the light, right, with the things I just mentioned. But let's talk about actual things on the light sources. So most people are going to want to create some kind of soft light. So soft is, again, determined by the size of the light source. So that means putting something in front of your light that is going to be large. Large light source is going to be soft. Usually, these will also end up being diffuse, meaning that they won't be specular. Specular is your highlights. You've seen plenty of videos on that. If you haven't, check out my other more technical videos. But when you're shooting into a softbox, it's soft because, generally, because it's large. It's also diffuse because you're shooting through fabric. If you're shooting through a shoot-through umbrella, it's soft because it's large, and it's diffuse because it's, you're shooting through diffusion. If you're shooting into a silver umbrella, though, it could be soft and it could be specular. I mean, because the softness is the size of the umbrella, right? The specularity could be the silver, right? So this is also true of beauty dishes. It's true of a lot of things. So first we'll start with something that's going to be soft and diffused. So I would probably say some kind of a softbox, that's relatively large depending on your general subject matter. So if you're shooting like a person, generally doing portraits, then like a 2x3 softbox is usually good. If you're shooting product, something smaller would probably be fine. But I almost always say that's the first softbox to buy, 2 foot by 3 foot. That's probably worth getting. If not a softbox, then some kind of large-ish umbrella, at least 3 feet, will give you that white umbrella, the shoot-through, will give you that diffuse light that's also large, right? Then you're going to want something that is really controllable, something that you have a lot of control and you can shape the light, right? Something you can put more precisely. Depending on the system that you have, this can vary. If you're using flash photography, you're probably going to be looking at something like grids, right? You get a grid set. A grid set's going to allow you to narrow the beam, right, to give you a little bit more precise control. If you're talking about hot lights, a lot of times you could be talking about barn doors. I found that barn doors on strobes they don't seem to work as well for me. I think that they have a place. They're just not the way that I normally modify strobes. I probably would put those on the top of your list if you're shooting strobes. I would go with grids. That's more kind of conventional of how you're going to be able to control the light, right? So you've got a nice big soft source. You've got a smaller source that you can control. That's probably going to be specular as well, although it might not be. And you're going to have, now for the last thing, you're going to want something that is definitely specular. That will give you options, right? Typically, that could be something like a beauty dish that's silver on the inside, or some kind of hard reflector. This is going to give you that like kind of punchy light for any kind of like high contrast stuff you want to do. You want it to feel like the sun. You want to have a blast of light coming through. You want to throw shadows, right? So you've got your big soft light. You've got your controllable, your tight control, and then you've got your specular source that is not necessarily small, right? Probably you want to go for like a beauty dish, like a magnum reflector, something that's relatively large, versus a little tiny reflector on the front of your strobe, because that would be not that different than the grid. I mean, the grid, has the fall off and stuff, but it would be both be hard. So something like that. So let's say, for instance, you might do a 2 foot by 3 foot softbox, a beauty dish with silver on the inside, and then a grid set, right? And that would give you the look that you want to get. You could also do big shoot-through umbrella, smaller silver umbrella, and barn doors, So something like that, right? That's going to give you a lot of options. What you probably don't want to do is go out and buy 3 lights and put 3 softboxes on them. That's boring, right? You may want, that ultimately, but if you're just starting out, or we're building a minimum kind of kit, you want to have options, right? Options are key. So you can do so many different shots with a kit like this. It's going to give you a lot of way to work. And what I would definitely do when you're setting up this kit is the next thing I would definitely add is some kind of gels, right? You want color gels. You want some gels to have diffusion. You buy like a kit from Roscoe. I think they've got like they do like I think they call one like a photography kit that has like a mix. This is going to give you the ability to now add some more flavor. And together, you're going to be able, with all these things together, you're going to be able to really do a huge variety of things, right? Now, this is the same. If you have speed lights, if you have, Profoto, if you have some other kind of brand, you got Flashpoint from Adorama, you're basically going to be able to find, right, these kind of things for all those different types of lights. And what you'll be able to do is, from this point, build and move forward. Because I always say, shoot with what you got until you can't do, something you want to do, then figure out why you can't do it, right? So if you come to me and say, should I buy a silver beauty dish? I mean, I don't know, should you? Because it really depends what you're trying to do. But if you have those 3 things, big soft diffuse, medium-ish specular, small shapeable, you should be able to do a lot of stuff. I mean, you should be able to shoot almost anything you can think of, right? Because remember, you also have your bounce boards, so you can actually use those in concert, right? I could use my softbox up above, and I could use my bounce board down below to use as clamshell lighting. Let's say, for instance, if I didn't have 2 softboxes. So it's not like you can't move things around and use them in different ways. So that's what I would recommend. That's kind of, if you write to me and ask me what you should get, I mean, somewhere in that range is what you should be aiming for. And then you add to it, right? Eventually, maybe you'll put a grid on your beauty dish, right? Maybe you'll have a white and a silver beauty dish because of what you're doing. Maybe you'll have different size softboxes. Maybe you'll have octagon boxes. There's all kinds of different modifiers you can get. And as you shoot, your style will evolve and you'll figure out what's working and what's not working for you. And then you can buy stuff that fits into that pattern. What you don't want to do is just copy somebody else's kit right off the bat necessarily, because you don't, if you just buy everything that I have, you may never do the things I do. Some of it might go to waste. I'd much rather see you use that for something else, right? So again, start off small. Those are kind of categories of things that you probably want to get. Depending on the work you do and what you like, you could start any way you want. Like I say, if you're going to start with one light, start with one light. And if you want to do like classic portraits, I'd probably go with the big soft diffuse. If you do one light and you want to do more beauty stuff, I'd maybe go with the hard specular light for that, right, with the cardboard to bounce stuff around. So it kind of depends on what you're building. So hopefully that helps, guys. If you are new here again, or maybe if you're not new, and you haven't subscribed already, go ahead and subscribe, ring the bell. if you want to see some of the stuff more in action, let me know, or leave me some comments of what you guys have in your kind of classic kit. Like if you had a 3-light kit with 3 modifiers, what is it that you would use, right? What do you, or whether you have it or not, like what are you thinking that would be good for you? And I'll see you next time.